Okay, you've tuned into another edition of Women for Progress Radio. Um, I got a little echo. I'm so glad tonight to have Mr. Christopher Bell with me, and I have an echo. Mr. Bell, are you on two different devices?
I'm on one device.
Okay, all right. Well, let's hope that it goes away, and hopefully we hear each other clearly. I definitely can hear you. And so thank you so much for joining us for a few minutes tonight to give us some updates. This is a very important time with the legislature, and remind the audience again, this is you've tuned into another edition of Women for Progress Radio. And we have several guests that's going to be with us tonight. Of course, we're going to start for a few minutes with Christopher Bell, who's the Mississippi House of Representatives for District 65. And then Miss Grace Butler Washington will be joining us also from the Mississippi House of Representatives, and she's District 69. And then my final half hour, I'm so excited to have Miss Oleta Garrett Fitzgerald, who is the executive director of the Children Defense Fund, and we're going to talk families and children. So we have a really packed schedule tonight. And thank everyone so much for tuning in. If you have any questions for our guests, you can put it in the comment section, and we'll be glad to share those comments with our guests. Mr. Bell has been in the legislature since 2016. He's a graduate of Jackson State University. His occupation is he's an insurance broker, and he's on various committees, committee memberships. He's a vice chair of the drug policy. He's on banking and financial services, energy, insurance, public health and services, and on the Ways and Means committee. So he's also the president of the Black Caucus. So welcome again, Chris, to the show. Thank you so much. I know you only have a few minutes because you're headed to another meeting. So I want to jump right in and talk about this legislative session. I've been hearing some really great things that the Black Caucus has really to set some priorities for this legislative session. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Ms. Jones. Really appreciate you, what you do, and thank you for all of your advocacy and everyone that participates with you that's a part of your organization. Yes, the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, we held a press conference on yesterday, and we were promoting our agenda for 2025. And in our agenda, we talk about priority. We talked about promoting literacy and nutrition for children. We talked about reforming the justice and judicial system. We asked for increasing access to health care with respect to expanding Medicaid. We also talked about opening workforce development with respect with in our communities. Workforce development has been a big issue within the state of Mississippi. We've put a lot of money in that with respect to Innovate Mississippi and other entities who have been doing good things, some of them, not all, but some, Hines Community College, Jones Community College, with respect to workforce development. And we also talked about addressing the inequities in the state budget. And we talked about the funding for our public schools and our universities, as well as our minority contractors, which is 100% an issue that we have had way before I was elected to the House. Um, it is less, we have less than 1% minority contractors that do business with the state of Mississippi. Less than 1%. Let that sink in. Of all the contracts that we have, that we issue in the state of Mississippi, less than 1%. And a guesstimate number is maybe 20, 25, 30 individuals out of the state of Mississippi that do business as a result of being a minority contractor. And I'm not even talking about the white women that are part of the minority contracting process. I'm talking about African Americans, people of color. And we also talked about early voting. That's 100% one of the things that we've talked about for years, having access to early voting. We also asked for individuals I'm sorry, for our state to make our voting for our president to be a state holiday. I'm sorry, to be a state holiday, so we can have individuals off to be able to go to the polls and vote. That's been going on since 2017. And we also talked about um, being supportive for minority business, targeting economic and public service gaps, where we talked about dealing with our minority businesses, improving our correctional facilities, and addressing other disparities within government. And those disparities, of course, healthcare is one, first and foremost on our list. Disparities with hiring within the state, disparities with respect to minority contracting. So
Well,
those are
you have a robust agenda, and all of those items are extremely impactful, and they touch the pocketbooks and the lives of citizens here in throughout the state of Mississippi. So I give you all a pat on the back for those causes. Of course, workforce development is so important. We talk a lot about economic development, but you can't have economic development without workforce development. And there
indeed.
are a lot of opportunities, even though a lot of our workforce training dollars, as you say, have been pouring into our community colleges. We need that spread out a bit, and so I'm glad that you're bringing that conversation up again this year, to see what we can do to try to make some balances there. And of course, when you talk about minority contracting, how do you feel, Chris, that this whole new agenda on the federal level around not DEI and a lot of the pushbacks on the minority issue is going to impact your ability to be effective in the legislature this year of getting something done?
Well, I will say this: Felon 47 has done a one job of making sure that he has dismantled everything with diversity and inclusion. Now we have several bills that are coming to the House and the Senate side with respect to diversity and inclusion. Personally, I don't believe those bills will see the light of day. I know for a fact that the Speaker of the House is not in favor of those bills and that legislation. He has been in favor of making sure that all Mississippians, regardless of your race, religion, and creed, have access to the things that we've all asked for, just to be able to work, provide for our families, and have a good education. Now, we differ on how to get that education, but he at least has been very amenable and very interactive with respect to understanding our needs with respect to the members of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus. So, with respect to the federal level side that you mentioned, uh, I foresee that being tied up in court for quite some time, and we need to keep doing what we're doing and push for equity amongst all Mississippians and all Americans.
I'm so glad you said that, because we don't want to get distracted. I think a lot of these actions and that's been going on for the last several days has been about keeping us distraction. I think it's putting a lot of fear in individuals. But I'm going to urge folks to make sure that you understand what the Constitution is and what your rights and responsibilities are, so we can be very clear in that we don't move with fear. And so I think that's very
Exactly.
important. Yeah, I've had so many women-led organizations and women businesses across the nonprofits across the state and everywhere that have been calling, and they're very concerned about the work that they've been doing and work that they've accomplished over the years, and being fearful that somehow that's going to be dismantled. But we must move forward. We must make sure that we don't get distracted. We keep moving forward with our agenda. If you got a vision, you got a plan, just continue to work it. And also, Chris, how can we work more effectively with the Black Caucus in these efforts? You have a really robust agenda, and I'm sure you all have a strategy for that agenda. How can not only voters out here, but also organizations, business leaders, community leaders, all of our stakeholders work with your organization more effectively?
Well, I've always said this, that change occurs in small groups, whether it's 15, 20, or 100. Being active and letting individuals hear your voice, whether it be through a phone call, email, or text message, whether it's through community events, getting people to understand uh, the importance of voting first and foremost is key. That is where we need to focus our efforts on. We have races coming up next year that we need to focus on. Um, Getting individuals out to vote, restoring individuals who have their rights taken away from them for convictions of crimes. We need to make sure that we have those individuals' rights restored, first and foremost. That is one of the goals that I see us doing with respect to the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus this year. Suffrage bills have been key for getting individuals' rights restored. The governor has vetoed several, and some he has let pass without his signature, but it automatically comes law. My goal for us in the caucus this year is to have 5,000 individuals' rights restored. 5,000. So I'm asking all groups, from all the sororities and fraternities, all your other social groups, to help us get 5,000 individuals' voters' rights restored.
Yes, and I agree with you, because as many voices as we get to the poll in all elections is so very important. We have a very important election coming up here locally, and so we want people to be tuned in. Well, I know you have
Exactly.
a meeting to go to, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I hope you will join us again when you have a little bit more time, and and I'm sure as we go along, we'll have some more conversations about what's happening in the legislature, and we'll stay tuned and share your information where we can.
Yes, most definitely. If I didn't have an event to go to tonight that I had already RSVP for, I definitely would stay longer. But thank you so much for giving me this time, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much. Be safe out there.
All right, be safe. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, I think we have Miss Oleta Fitzgerald in the room.
Get my camera on.
Okay. And while we're waiting on Miss Fitzgerald to get her camera on, I want to remind our audience about a few things that are coming up. We Women for Progress Lunch and Learn is usually the first Tuesdays of every month. The first Tuesdays of every month. But for the month of February, due to the legislative session, our Lunch and Learn will be February 5th on Wednesday, next Wednesday, February 5th. And the location for the Lunch and Learn is going to be at Char. We'll be at Char on 55. And we're so excited to have a panel of amazing leadership on the panel. We have Senators Blunt, David Blunt. We have Senators Hillman Fraser, and we have Senator Solly Norwood that's going to be coming on, talking, not only sharing and updating us about the legislative session, but also we're going to have an opportunity to kind of chat with him on a lot of the issues that are going on. And so we're really looking forward to that powerhouse. Again, we're going to be at the Char restaurant. The cost is $25. You're going to get an amazing full course meal, including your beverage, and you can pay on site. And our link will be available later on tonight, and we'll be pushing that out on our social media pages where you can pay online or you can come in and pay. What a great opportunity for you to come out, bring a friend with you at Lunch and Learn. And if you have associate and business partner, I've been hearing women tell me all this week is I got some meetings going on that day. Look, we all got to have a meal, so why not make it Women for Progress Lunch and Learn? And Char is amazing partner of ours, and we're so glad that they continue to host us, and they've always done a really great job, and the food is always incredible. So come and have a full meal with us, an amazing conversation as we talk to our senators about the legislative session and many of the policy issues that we're going to be talking about, that we talked about tonight with Mr. Chris Bell, which of course, Medicaid, workforce development, minority contracting, improving the judicial system, and literacy and nutrition for children. So a very robust agenda. And so we look forward to that. The registration begins at 11:30. And then we also, again, we're waiting on our guests to come in. And we're waiting on Miss Grace Butler and Miss Oleta Fitzgerald. Look like we're having a few technical issues, but I always got great information to share. So while we wait till she get connected, I'm going to continue to update you on where we are. Again, the Lunch and Learn is next Tuesday, February 5th. The registration begins at 11:30. Our program runs promptly from 12 to 1, and we try to keep it at that 12 to 1 hour so you can get back to work and get going. And if you want to come right in and be able to sit down and get your meal, then make sure that you pay in advance. You can pay through PayPal using your credit or debit card. And we have also a Cash App link that you can also pay for that $25. So please do so. Join us. We're so excited for this particular conversation come up, and it's so very important. Now, I'm also very excited to be able to tell you that Women for Progress Radio Network celebrates 15 years of changing the dialogue in Mississippi. And we're so excited again to bring you back Women in Media Celebration, which is going to be February 27th at the Railroad District at 824 State Street. 824 State Street. And we'll be at the Railroad District. Oh my goodness, we are planning an exciting event with food and beverage, and we're going to be honoring again some amazing women in media. And that media covers journalism, reporting, TV, radio, social media content, podcasting. So we're going to have a real wealth of honorees that we're going to be celebrating this year, along with our own radio network, which celebrates 15 years. We started this organization, the radio show and programming in the network over 15 years ago. And of course, Women for Progress has been around over 46 years. But 15 years ago, we started the radio network. It was a radio network created, produced, and hosted by women here in the state of Mississippi. And we've been so proud of the work. We have talked to people from all over this country, leaders and stakeholders and business women and so many amazing individuals that are doing work wherever they sit and stand. So we are very excited to be hosting that celebration. Miss Fitzgerald, are you with me? Miss Fitzgerald, are you with me?
I don't think, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And look, if you can't get your face on, don't worry about
it. I can't get this the video to come on.
Okay, no problem.
And this StreamYard on my iPad. So
okay, no problem.
Can just go without the video.
Yeah, let's roll like women do. We
yeah, that's what we do. That's what Black women do for sure.
That's right. So let me share with my audience, those who just moved into the country and don't know who Oleta Fitzgerald is. I want to share a little bit of your bio. Oleta Garrett Fitzgerald is the director of the Children's Defense Fund's Southern Region Office and also serves as the regional administrator for the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice. In the past, she has worked with the Atlanta-based Southeastern Public Education Program of the American Friends Service Committee and been a project director for Southern Region Council. She joined the Clinton for President campaign in '92 and was appointed White House liaison and executive assistant to then Secretary of Agriculture Mike Espy by President Bill Clinton in January of 1993. Shortly thereafter, she was named the department's Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, where she worked with local, state, and tribal governments, coordinated the administration's long-term recovery of Midwestern states affected by the Great Flood of 1993, and was a member of USDA's Executive Review Panel selecting rural empowerment zones in enterprise communities. She serves on the board of the Mississippi Head Start Association, the Mississippi Children's Museum, the advisory committee for the Stennis Institute of Government at Mississippi State University, and is a member of the State Children's Welfare Coalition and Global Women's Action Network for Children. She also received honorary membership in Phi Alpha, the National Honor Society for Public Affairs Administration from Mississippi State University in '99. Ms. Fitzgerald holds a BA in sociology in Tougaloo College in Jackson, Mississippi. And I know personally she's also a mother. I cannot say that. And Ms. Fitzgerald, how many children are you responsible for besides Children's Defense Fund? Okay, Ms. Fitzgerald, do I have you? Hello? 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 Ms. Fitzgerald, are you with us? Hello? Okay, we're having technical issues tonight, but I thank everybody for joining us tonight. We have so many people on our just waiting patiently for our conversation, and I'm sorry we're having technical issues with our guest tonight. But I want to just remind us again, and hopefully I'm going to give her a few more minutes to try to jump on, that next Tuesday we have Women for Progress Lunch and Learn. Next Wednesday, we have Women for Progress Lunch and Learn, and we'll be at Char Restaurant on 55. Our guests and panelists would be Senator David Blunt, Senator Hillman Fraser, and Senator Solly Norwood. So what a robust and powerful panel that we're going to be talking about the legislative session, a lot of the policies and the bills that we need to make sure that we keep our eye on. So it's going to be a powerhouse conversation. We start promptly at 11:30 with registration from 11:30 to 12. It's a great opportunity for you to register, network with women from all over the city and some from the state. So we have some women that come in, drive in from the Delta and North Mississippi for our Lunch and Learn. So we want you to join us. It's always an opportunity to meet amazing women that are doing amazing things. And then our program runs from 12 to 1 o'clock. And we promptly try to get you out of there at 1 o'clock so you can head right back to work. And we're centrally located. Char is right there in the middle, in the heart of Jackson on 55. And so join us. The cost is only $25. And that's inclusive of a full course meal, including beverages. And it's one of the best meals that you can have. Char does a wonderful job. The food is always comes out hot and ready for you to eat. And it's always a great meal with some great people. So join us for that. And again, as I stated, Women for Progress Radio Network celebrates 15 years of changing the dialogue in Mississippi this year. And so we're going to be having our Women in Media event again. Our last event was in 2023. And we're excited to be bringing that celebration back again. We'll be at the Railroad District on State Street, 824 State Street. That's February 27th, Thursday, February 27th, starts at 6 p.m. And it's going to be amazing, amazing event. We're going to be honoring women from all types of media, journalism, reporting, TV, radio, social media content, podcasting. And so women are doing great things in media, whether it's managing and hosting and creating radio shows and making sure that they highlight the work of women in communities all over Mississippi. So we're going to celebrate that in a very, very big way. And we want you to join us. So it's a really great event. And let's see if we have Miss.
Can you hear me now?
I think I got you now.
I'm not going to touch anything. I was still trying to get that camera on, but I'm going to leave it alone. But it's good to be here with you, Willie.
Thank you so much. And let's jump right into our conversation because I know I have only a half hour with you and I got a lot of information I want to cover. I do want to start just a little bit, Aletta, by just talking about your journey to becoming director of the Children's Defense Fund. Tell our audience, what is the Children's Defense Fund and how did you get to this spot of being this director of this amazing organization for so many years?
Oh, Willie, that's a long, long story, but we won't try to go through it all. The Children's Defense Fund is a 50-year-old child advocacy organization, public policy advocacy that's based in Washington, D.C. It was started, the founder is a woman named Marian Wright Edelman, who many people in Mississippi will remember from the Civil Rights Movement. Marian got her start. Marian was the first Black woman to pass the bar in Mississippi. She graduated from Yale Law School, but she came to Mississippi during the Civil Rights Movement with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, working with Reuben Anderson and Fred Banks down on Farris Street and taking cases all over the state of Mississippi. Marian is a native of South Carolina, but a lot of people really think that she came from Mississippi. We work on all issues nationally and at state and regional levels related to programs that benefit children and families. The Children's Health Insurance Program that many people benefit from here in Mississippi and across the country, about 7 million children. That piece of legislation got started in a meeting that I was in with Marian Wright Edelman back in the early 95. When people were telling her that there were children who benefited from Medicaid, which had been an issue that we worked on closely, but they had families who made too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but not enough money to be able to afford family health insurance policies. So that was the beginning of development of legislation that passed Congress that created the Children's Health Insurance Program. Then, of course, once in federal legislation is passed, in many instances, you have to have companion state legislation to implement that program. So we worked in state capitals in Mississippi and Louisiana, in Georgia and Florida and across the South, working with members of legislative Black caucuses and legislative leadership at the time, 1997, to get those programs implemented at the state level. We've also done a lot of work on TANF, and as the old AFDC program was transitioning into TANF under the Clinton administration, we got engaged very similarly on TANF implementation legislation. And I tell you, working with folks like Carol Burnett and ACLU, and organizations back then, the Mississippi Health Advocacy Program, Linda West, just a number of organizations, we pushed for the most progressive provisions in that welfare reform legislation. We didn't get all of them, and we foresaw in a report that was released in conjunction with Jackson State University's School of Public Policy and Cortina Mull and Young, and Marty Weissman over at Mississippi State University's Stennis Institute, in a report that was released early and late in 1990s. Everything that has happened with TANF since then was foreseen in that report and warned about in that report. So we've been engaged with that over a period of time. How I got to CDF, in 1970, I graduated from Tougaloo and wanted to get to the city. So I moved to Atlanta, and in Atlanta went to work for a group that was funded by the American Friends Service Committee, working with a woman named Winifred Green. Winifred Green is the oldest board member before she passed, was the oldest founding board member for the Children's Defense Fund, and was a very close collaborator with Marian Wright Edelman. So I met Marian back in the 70s. We actually had a contract with CDF on its first report that was called Children Out of School in America, that was issued in 1975, I believe. So the relationship went back to then. And then I've done some other things in Atlanta, and then came back home, got involved in Mike Espy's first campaign for Congress, and went to work in that congressional office, and then the Clinton's first presidential campaign, and had a presidential appointment to the first Clinton administration. Getting to USDA and working for government was clearly not my forte. So I reconnected with Marian while I was in DC, and she asked me, did I want to go home? And I jumped at the opportunity and came back to Mississippi in 1995. This year, we celebrate 30 years of our office opening in Jackson. And I have to bifurcate that some. We opened the office in 1995 as the Black Community Crusade for Children. The Black Community Crusade for Children was chaired by Drs. John Hope Franklin and Dorothy Height. So I came back into Mississippi working under the auspices of that subset of the CDF. Prior to my coming to Mississippi, Mississippi was one of the earliest offices that CDF had opened across. We have state offices. I'm on the regional office, but we have state offices across the country. The original Children's Defense Fund office was started and directed by Rems Barber. CDF had closed down that office, and we came back in, as I said, as the Black Community Crusade for Children. And this year, we will be celebrating 30 years, and we will be back in touch with you all because our aim is to honor two strong Rems and Dr. Robert Smith in a major celebration, connecting our as Tougaloo's byline says, connecting where history meets the future. Right. So that's long story, but that's how I got here.
And you know, the Children's Defense Fund has always and remains such an important entity, both nationally and locally here in Mississippi. And thank you so much for your work. Aletta, please share with us what you see as the biggest challenges for children and families right now in the state of Mississippi.
Well, I think all of us recognize that we're in for a row. That all programs, and it happened before the first Trump administration. And I remember when that election happened, one of the things that we would say to each other is, America, welcome to Mississippi, because of the policies and the ideology of what was going on, and that shift that we began to see. You know, we knew there was a shift. Public policy makers had gotten a lot more conservative. and that both at the federal level and state legislatures and state governmental offices. So we knew the shift was coming, but we hadn't seen anything like what we're getting ready to see now, we think. So Marion has retired, and it is, it's with great chagrin that in her retirement, and she has some health issues, that 50 years of progressive movement can get rolled back so fast. So having come out of both an electoral political framework and an advocacy and public policy background, it is clear that we're at a point that is comparable in some ways to when Fannie Lou Hamer and Yanita Blackwell and SNCC, when people were trying to get the right to vote. Because the country, the powers that were, recognized that voting would open them up, their elections up, to having to support policies that they did not want to support. I grew up in Mississippi in the 50s, 60s. My mom was a school teacher. I remember what our schools looked like. I remember the fight for having equitable funding for public schools. I remember Black teachers getting paid about a third of what white teachers were paid. My mom was one of the original folks that got Black people that got into the MAE. So we know what those days were, and it was a fight about resources then from state government, the state support for public education. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about now? State support for public education. So the fight against voting rights then, and what we see now in terms of challenging folks' ability to vote, making it more difficult, but also tamping down the vote, is very troubling of where we are right now, because it doesn't appear our community understands as much as it did back then how important the vote is.
Yes.
And how, if we had all voted, we would be in a very different situation. And I mean all of Mississippi, but I mean all of the country.
Yeah.
We would be in a different situation than what we are in right now. The vote matters. And so I think we're at a place more than any time in recent history where there's no disconnection between voting and public policy. Because if we don't vote, we're locked out of the public policy making game. Chris was on a little earlier. The legislators we have here in Mississippi, the governor we have in Mississippi, the president and the presidential appointments that we're looking at have been very clear about what they want to do with programs. This recent shutdown in government payments, they rescinded that, but under the cover, they are analyzing everybody's budgets. So Head Start programs are going to be under terrible oversight. Any programs that benefit, as they call it, DEI, which is just slang for Black people, anything that's beneficial, the only hope we have is that there are white poor people. And white poor people voted for them. Mm-hmm. So in order to get at us, to emaciate us in the way they would like to, they got to hurt their base. And we have seen some of that roll back. But when it comes to public school education, I wish that we wouldn't have to say this, but it's a continual fight. It's a perpetual fight to get our children educated. So that's where we are. People should be very concerned about access to food assistance. They should be very concerned about access and holding on to access to child care. This state has been so, I don't know any other word to use, but low down to poor families in the way they treat people trying to get access to resources and to health care. There's never the conversation, though, about the wages. People would not need assistance if they had jobs and wages that covered their needs. So we're caught in this vice. There's no economic development activity. You know, we talk about the work in the Delta, the work you're doing on workforce training. So bottom line for me is, until we can vote ourselves out of here, we have got to re-educate our community about why the vote is important. Not about a candidate, but why we have to vote and how that vote connects to your quality of life, your access to health care. And we're talking about people literally dying.
Yeah.
You know, we're not being, there's no hyperbole in this. People without access to health care are dying. Expanded Medicaid is a no-brainer, except that it helps poor families. But on the same time now, we're talking about this ridiculous roll back in state income tax. If we got that much money, we'd expand Medicaid.
Right.
The 2 years ago, the only NICU unit in the state in the Mississippi Delta closed. A baby born in trauma in the Mississippi Delta either has to be taken to Memphis or brought to Jackson. And if anybody has ever had to deal with a child in that kind of situation, they know that that's further traumatizing that child's ability to live and to thrive. They're pulled away from their mother. So this is why we have to vote. I don't care about whether or not you like a candidate. That means nothing to me. You got to make a decision based upon the conditions in your community and whether or not this person or that person is going to be better for trying to increase your access to opportunity. I could go on. We're dealing with this issue about broadband expansion. It's just so many things out there that we are fighting on. But we don't have broadband. We could have telehealth that would save lives in rural areas. We could have better educational services. Our children, if they don't know technology, are not going to be able to do anything in this world. We got the Biden administration in the infrastructure legislation. Mississippi got over $2 billion to expand, and grant money to expand access to the internet across the state. We're having to watch that closely. That means like the AT&Ts and the Comcast and the C-Spires will get $2 billion in grant money. But
we have not seen any significant impact all over.
There's a lot of pots of money, but this big pot of money is just about to roll out. With that administration change, we have to watch these companies because there is no requirement for them to provide affordable services. Now, you're going to give these companies $2 billion, but you're not going to require them to provide services to people who can't afford the high prices of having the kind of internet services that they need. And say this one thing about it, last thing about internet, and I'm stopping. During COVID, some people had access to internet. They paid an arm and a leg for it. Elon Musk is providing internet services up in the Delta. Elon Musk is everywhere. When the children had to go home and do school from home during COVID, if you had 3 children, one was in first grade, one was in third, and one was in the fifth, with the internet service you had, all three of those kids couldn't be on the internet at the same time. So somebody had to take a day. First grader take a day. Second, you know, this is the kind of situation we're living in. So these are policies. These are decisions. And only the governor will make the decision about who's going to get this money. We've gone through all of this process, but it boils down to the governor is going to make these contracts. If we had a different governor, if we had voted, we wouldn't be under this vice of trying to convince somebody who gives less than a hoot about us to please, mister, can our children get some internet services? This is why voting is important.
Yes, and and you connected the dots to everything tonight, and especially when you talk about even the future of where our children are, even around basic, you know, everything we do evolves around technology, the internet, the social media, everything. And so you have these large populations of individuals and families and communities that don't have access to that, don't have access to the world as we know it, and will not be prepared for the future of the world as we know it. So it's very, very important. And so those folks who are sitting out on election day and are saying that I don't feel this or I don't feel that, it ain't about emotional and feeling. It's about the pocketbook. It's about the quality of life. And we have got to get to the polls. I want to remind everybody here in the city of Jackson, we have municipal elections this year in 2025 that is so very, very important. It's so important for you to think about what leadership is, what it needs to be to your community. And when you get to the poll, you need to be pulling down somebody who has some innovative ideas, who has proven leadership, who can work with people, who can work with stakeholders from all across the base. We need folks voting like they've never voted before. It can't be that you like your neighbor or you think the same person needs to be in there again. We got to have transformational leadership, underline transformational leadership, not only locally, but statewide. No matter where you sit and where you stand, you got to think about your vote this year. It is so important. We need women at the poll, which we show up all the time, right, Aletta?
That's right.
But look, I want to hit a few points because we have about
let me say that before we leave that. In
Sure.
2 years, we can make a difference. In 2 years, we could stop some of this hatred. We could stop some of this attack on minority organizations and operations and businesses. We can make a difference. In 2 years, we can make a difference at the federal level and at the state level. So as we're out here, you know, one of the most important things that we can do as organizations and nonprofits is to continue not to wait until there is an election, right, and talk about a candidate, but have the conversations that we are having here. And I'm working very closely with Pam Shaw. I think y'all know Pam, on a communication strategy and with our other nonprofit partners in the state, so that we can put out information so people will be able to discern what is relevant and what is necessary, and get off of social media believing everything you read. Mm-hmm. But be studious. These are some serious times for us and for our children's future. I'm going to be okay. My 2-year-old great grandbaby may not. Mm-hmm. You know, what kind of world are we going to leave her? So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to hit on a few topics because when we talk about the challenges, we have some opportunities, but there's some challenges that we have to make. And it's going to be even more difficult when you got the administration is tearing apart, where they're saying that if you have a federal contract, construction companies, contracts, developers, all these folks who had these quotas that they had to meet around women, around minorities, that they're striking away right now, it's going to become even more challenging for us. And we have to continue to stay focused and make sure that we're intentional about what we do. So also we have to watch messaging, Aletta. And I'm glad you mentioned Pam Shaw and what she's going to be doing. You're trying to create an education and messaging around the state 365 days a year to make sure we continue to connect the dots. But when we talk about this focus on school choice, there's some things behind that conversation. What do we need to know about school choice and the impact of communities as it relates to that particular policy?
Willie, I go back. Did you watch the movie Queen?
Yes.
Queen was the apple of the master's eye. Queen was the master's daughter. Queen was treated very differently until Queen got caught teaching a Black man how to read. Education is our civil rights issue, because without education, they can do anything to and with us, or we'll die on the vine. This is a continuation of education, the fight against education for all children. It was only in the 70s when school desegregation took place, pretty much in Mississippi. Before that, there were about 40 private schools that cropped up all over the state of Mississippi that white children went to avoid going to school with Black children in public school. Back then, the white community had more money. Those schools were supported sometimes by our own tax dollars. We just didn't know they were going there. The only people that education choice will benefit are going to be children in private schools. Let's say we get school choice. It sounds good. You're pulling children out of the Jackson Public School District. You're deflating their budget. They still got the same infrastructure they got to take care of, the same lights, water, gas, buildings, maintenance, teachers, bus drivers, but they're losing money.
Mm-hmm.
When that child leaves, those tax dollars leave with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, say a child gets about $7,000 a year per year from the state and from the county in education money per pupil spending. $7,000 is not going to buy you a private school setting.
That's correct.
It is not going to buy you. But if I am paying $20,000 at Jackson Academy, and I can get $7,000 from public school budget, then that just lowered the amount of money I got to pay for my child to be in private school.
Right.
I want us to take 2,500 children out of the Jackson Public School District and have them to apply at Jackson Academy, at Jackson Prep, at Madison Ridgeland Academy. I want them to go over there and say, we want choice. And I want you to understand what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So choice does not benefit us.
Right.
Our schools struggle because we don't have a tax base. Our schools struggle because you can't compare generally Jackson Public Schools with Clinton Public Schools or with Rankin Public Schools. The Jackson Public School footprint is old. Everything over there is old. The building is breaking apart. Clinton is new.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton's got a different kind of tax base. Rankin County's got a different kind of tax base. Madison County's got a different kind of tax base. The incomes in those counties are higher. So chances are those children are getting quality early childhood education. they're getting trips, they're getting exposure, they're getting summer programs. So you can't compare what's happening. We have to have people teaching our children who will fight like they are in mass units to get them educated. And that's what we have in our community schools.
And also, I want to add too, when you talk about getting those dollars out of JPS system, you're going to change those communities. Now you have the makeup in the children from those communities. You're leaving individuals there who you don't have that diversity in incomes, you don't have that diversity in community, and it just continues to be impacted. The idea of what we can do economically in Hinds County changes when you start pulling those kids out of JPS. So we need to be very, very careful about these particular policies that sound good, and we're not connecting the dots to the pocketbooks, to our communities, etc. We're at the end of our hour, and I knew our time was going to go by, and I have so many other questions, but Aletta, I know you'll come back and talk with us later on in the legislative session. I want to hear more about bills. Is there any bills specifically we need to watch right now, or you all are still working on that?
Well, we are watching them. We have been told that there wasn't an appetite for education much around choice, but we also have to watch everything that's happening nationally now. Mm-hmm. We were very close to getting Medicaid expansion last year. Now everybody, that's all on hold because they want to see what the Trump administration is going to do. I don't, the drill down from the top is what we have to watch. But it is going to affect everything. Mm-hmm. It's going to affect every program. So even though we don't see a lot of bills moving now, we got to be very careful of what happens toward the end of the session. Right. And what happens now, that income tax break elimination, mm-hmm. we shouldn't fall for that. Right. We should not fall for that. That's right. Eliminating the income tax is not going to benefit us greatly. Right. For the little bit amount of money that we would save, they're talking about adding on top of that in sales tax. So poor people pay more in sales. Sales tax affects poor people's budgets more than anybody else's budgets. They're talking about counties. They're taking money away from the counties. Yeah. So don't fall for that. Please don't fall for that.
Well, we're at our wrap up, and thank you all. Thank you so much for being my guest tonight, Oleta, and thanks so much for Chris Bell. Thank you so much for coming on and being with us tonight. I have a slew of individuals I see that have chimed in with us tonight. Thank you all so much. I see some Women for Progress members that have sat in with us tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us. Make sure you continue to share this programming. We're here every Thursday, and then there's a whole list of podcasts and radio programming on our website at womenforprogressradio.com, womenforprogressradio.com. So please check out our lineup. We're going to be adding a lot more programming this year as we celebrate 15 years of radio with Women for Progress Radio Network. And so again, we want to remind you to join us next Wednesday. We won't be first Tuesday. We'll be first Wednesday next week because of the legislative session. And again, our panelists would be Senator David Blunt, Senator Hillman Fraser, and Senator Solly Norwood will be sharing a panel with us next Wednesday at 11:30 at Char. So please come. Oleta, if you're in town and you're around, we'd love to have you as our guest next week.
Will. Yeah.
Yeah, so please stop by. Bring Pam with you too. And we'd love to have you all here. And we're looking for a very robust, informative conversation next week. The cost is only $25, ladies. I tell you, and the meal is always wonderful and fresh and hot. Full course meal. So come, eat, drink, network, have a great conversation, relax on lunch, get back to work, and be empowered by the information. So thank you all so very much. If you want to find more information about Women for Progress Radio and Women for Progress Radio Network and the work that we do organizationally, Women for Progress celebrates 46 years of community service this year. Also, womenforprogress.net, Womenforprogress.net is our website, and womenforprogressradio.com. We're available on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you get your podcast, we're there. And so thank you again for joining us tonight. I see Miss Pauline. Thank you so much for joining in. We look forward to a conversation with you and the amazing that you're doing to support individuals that are incarcerated and the families of incarcerated individuals. Thank you so much for your work. This has been Women for Progress Radio. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.